Next, delivering Money Matters to God, the case for Christian private schools to require financial literacy education. Please welcome Dylan Black.
Imagine filling your first piggy bank with coins. Perhaps you had a worn-out wallet or a bank account where you saved for the latest video game or eventually your first car. Maybe you once took out a car loan, realizing later you should have thought twice before assuming that debt. Money can be helpful or dangerous. Today, more than ever, we are faced with information overload. Teenagers are vulnerable to predatory lenders, credit cards, or sliding into debt. We swipe plastic cards, tap point-of-sale terminals, and utilize our phones for purchases. We're surrounded by options. But without guidance, options can become risks. Many high school graduates understand very little about how to budget, save, and think biblically about wealth. So how should we, as Christian school teens, learn prudent and responsible financial behaviors aligned with God's view of money? By researching the web, at home, or church, some contend formal education should require financial literacy to ensure economic guidance. Is financial responsibility a personal responsibility, or should it be an institutional school priority? These questions echo the wise sayings and instructions in Proverbs that were utilized thousands of years ago to educate, form moral character, and teach youth how to live a good and effective life. Warnings like the borrower is a slave of the lender, and encouragements like the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance spoke to real-life decision-making tools. For centuries, wise financial instruction has been the cornerstone of moral education. Aristotle often addressed virtues like wisdom, prudence, temperance, and generosity as essential virtues for a well-ordered life. One description he used for wisdom is a part of virtue as a whole. In the 21st century, policymakers and educators realized Americans were entering adulthood without the skills needed to manage financial complexity. The results were state-level initiatives and personal finance education programs to better equip America's youth. The first state-level initiative to mandate these courses was in Utah, and now today, 26 states have mandated these courses, including California. Although Christian schools want to maintain independence and stay true to their vision, I argue all Christian schools should make a personal finance class a mandatory part of their high school education to practice economic discipleship that involves biblical principles like wisdom, stewardship, and generosity are taught. At 18, teens are considered adults who can obtain a car loan, credit card, or even sign a lease without receiving any financial education ever. College costs and student loan debt are skyrocketing. The Education Data Initiative states university graduates owe an average of $28,244 a year after they leave school. Over half of teens in a 2022 survey feel unprepared to handle personal finance. High school students need guidance in the form of a mandatory class before graduation. 3,000 verses in Scripture are dedicated to money and one's relationship to it. God's teachings about money aren't just financial tips. They remind us that everything we have comes from God, and we are as stewards called to take care of it wisely. Proverbs 16:3 states, "Commit your walks to the Lord, and your plans will be established." Jesus' teachings about money often are warnings against greed. He emphasized generosity and confidence in God's provision. This foundation shapes the goal of a Christian financial literacy class, which can help students discern which authorities to trust, practice economic discipleship, and teach biblical principles in the most comprehensive way through God's eyes. Holistic training in a biblical FLE class compare biblical principles with important practical instruction. For example, wisdom in creating and balancing a monthly budget, including essentials like housing, food, and giving back by stewarding ingoing and outgoing funds. temperance incorporated into responsible credit card usage, understanding the relationship of debt and interest, analyzing college costs, and understanding how house and car loans work. And prudence, connected to saving strategies for the future and creating an emergency fund, balanced with investing in the present. Harvard MBA graduates John Cortines and Gregory Baumer, authors of God and Money, offer two principles for wealth management, stating first, everything we own actually belongs to God, and second, our wealth and possessions should be used for God's purposes. These principles reshape how students should approach money from a Christian perspective, not as something to spend only for themselves, but as something to steward faithfully. Rather than only learning how to budget or avoid debt, students would be trained to ask questions like, how can I use my money to serve God and others? People's money mindset generally tends towards one of three possibilities: a spender, a saver, or a servant. A Christian FLE class can help students develop a servant mindset that involves spending, saving, and serving. A Christian FLE class can assist students in framing their financial decision-making. Critics like Loyola Law School professor Lauren Willis contend the financial industry will always be a step ahead of personal finance programs. Thus, education is chasing a moving, unreachable target, asserting people will never cope. Willis claims school-based education cannot overcome the nature of change and complexity of finance, like the growing of crypto and digital coins. The financial industry is certainly evolving and complex, yet that doesn't undermine the value of a Christian financial literacy class, as God is the unwavering constant to mitigate these variables. God's truth doesn't change. The latest financial product doesn't matter. What matters is the application of biblical principles to the product, making biblical financial literacy education priceless. Understanding prudence and temperance assists in controlling impulses, analyzing information, and equipping students to cope in day-to-day economic living. Faith-based financial education equips students to view money as a God-given resource, guiding them to live wisely and steward it faithfully according to Scripture. Incorporating financial literacy in Christian schools is not just a trend, but a necessary reform, calling educators to disciple students in biblical stewardship. We must train the next generation to become both spiritually strong and financially fit. Let me ask all of you this. Did you guys ever receive financial education in high school? For me, no, but I wish I had. I urge Christian schools to seize the responsibility to practice both earthly and eternal stewardship by adding a Christian financial literacy class. Money matters to God. Shouldn't it also matter to a student's education? Thank you.